Back in 2019, I played the original Dusk Diver on the PS4. At first I thought it was a decent game, but as time went on, I actually grew to love it and I could see the potential that it had. Fast forward to 2022 and we'll soon have the release of Dusk Diver 2, a game that, in my opinion, harnesses its potential, takes full advantage of it and improves upon itself in virtually every way. It plays better, it looks better, and the PS5 version that I used for this review runs flawlessly. I'm just going to be upfront and say that if you enjoyed the first one, you should absolutely pick up the sequel. And even if you haven't played the original game, I honestly think this is worth a look. So what is Dusk Diver 2? Well, it's an action RPG brawler that features real-time combat and multiple playable characters, but it has far more in common with something like the Yakuza series. It takes a lot of ideas, inspiration, and structure from the Yakuza games in terms of exploration, combat encounters, and its overall feel. The story is a direct continuation of Dusk Diver 1. It does sort of expect you to know who the characters are, but there is a section in the menus that will explain the plot of the first game if you need it. You'll be able to switch between a party of characters as you progress through the game, but the main protagonist, as with the first game, is Yumo. She's no longer a high school student and has now started to attend college. She's basically doing the whole Spider-Man thing, you know, school kid by day and superhero by night. Yumo has been recovering and just trying to live her life after the ordeal she faced in the first game. Her and the other Guardians, Leo, Barhet, and Leviada, have been preparing, training, and keeping a watchful eye just in case the Chaos Beasts return. One day, and without any warning, rifts begin to appear in the streets, and if left unchecked, could unleash Chaos Beasts into the human realm once more. But why did they appear? Well, it's up to Yumo and the rest of the Guardians to find out and put a stop to it. The game has 3 important sections to be aware of. You've got the hub world of Shimonding that you'll be exploring throughout the game, the dungeon-like combat areas of Yushanding, and a home base in the form of the convenience store where Yumo works part-time. First, let's talk about that convenience store. You'll often find yourself coming back here for various tasks such as buying recovery items, changing costumes, saving your game, or talking to the other characters. A lot of the story quests start and end at this location purely because of the fact that it's where the characters work together in their daily lives. They all know each other very well at this point, and it functions as a default base of operations for them. Once you leave the safety of the convenience store, you'll be stepping out into the hub world of Shimonding, which is a pretty close representation of a real-world location of the same name. As you explore the streets, you'll be able to hunt for collectibles, obtain side quests, buy food which buffs your characters, or simply run to the next main mission. There's also some travel points like the subway or the crossings which give you access to other areas in the game world and will often be used when playing through the main narrative. These streets are home to all manner of events, quests, and random combat encounters, although the activities available to the player do change as you progress through the story. This means that if you don't complete certain side objectives at certain times, you won't ever be able to. Don't worry too much though, there isn't an actual timer on the side quests, they just become unavailable after reaching certain story beats. A lot of your time in Dusk Diver 2 will be spent fighting Chaos Beasts in Yushanding, which is a kind of parallel world that exists alongside the hub world. It's a twisted and distorted doppelganger dimension which Yumo and her Guardian friends must enter in order to defeat the Chaos Beasts inside. Combat only occurs in Yushanding, and while some story missions require you to explore a dungeon-like map, you can get into random battles with possessed humans as well. You'll notice certain NPCs in the hub world have a black smoky aura, and if you walk into them, it'll start a random encounter and throw you into Yushanding. Once you defeat the encounter, a new NPC with a black aura will appear elsewhere, which effectively gives you unlimited free battles if you want to grind out some XP. These combat encounters are very small and short, often taking place in a single walled-off arena, while the levels found in the main missions are much more elaborate. For example, in one of the first levels you'll find yourself in what looks like a giant gacha or capsule toy machine. You'll need to collect coins through exploration, avoid hazards, and fight Chaos Beasts to open up some blocked-off paths in order to proceed. The combat itself is actually quite straightforward. You can perform a light attack combo with the square button, a heavy attack with triangle, and a signature skill with circle. You can also jump, attack in the air, and dodge when need be. If you hold down R1, you'll have access to your unlocked and equipped skills. These skills are mapped to 3 of the 4 face buttons, with the 4th being reserved for the character's super transformation or awakening skill. If you can deal enough damage and fill the meter on the left while in your awakened state, you'll be able to use a super attack for large amounts of damage. The Chaos Beasts can also be staggered or smashed into a wall to put them into a vulnerable state. When this happens, you simply press L1 and R1 together to perform a strong finishing move. By default, your attacks do seem to target the nearest enemy, however you can lock onto enemies by pressing L2, which makes landing some of the attacks a bit easier. Defeating the various enemies in the game will net you XP for leveling up your characters, consumable items, and these rainbow coins known as wafers. These wafer coins can be spent on new abilities and skills which become available as you level up and can be equipped in the menus. Another thing you can do in the menus is equip helpful support items which can be accessed during a fight by holding down L1 and using the D-pad. When you're not holding down L1, you can use the D-pad to switch between the characters in your party on the fly during combat. Each character has their own strengths and a somewhat unique playstyle. Yumo is your decent in any situation all-rounder, Leo is strong but slow, Barret is the fastest but lacks power, and Leviada is a ranged attacker who suffers up close. When the characters level up, you actually get full control over the stat increases, so you can play to their strengths or try to fix some of their weaknesses. It's really up to you. If that wasn't enough, each character can equip a variety of gear in 4 different slots. As you might expect, this gear provides stat bonuses, and later in the game you can socket gems into certain pieces to boost them even further. The game will be available via download on PS4, PS5 and Nintendo Switch on the 30th of August 2022. I believe it's also already available on Steam if you'd rather get it there. All console versions will be getting a physical release on day 1. So what did I think of the game? Well, Dusk Diver 1 was a bit of a pleasant surprise for me back in 2019. It was actually a gift from my other half. She got it for me that Christmas because she saw it on my Amazon wishlist. I didn't really have, really any expectations going into it, but within an hour I was really quite impressed with what I was playing. I beat pretty much everything in that first game over the holidays, and I guess it's one of those situations where a game just clicks with you and you wonder why no one else has ever heard of it. I mean, I really didn't think we'd ever get a sequel, but I'm so glad that we did because I get to talk about this series again and, present it to you guys on my channel. All that said, I do think it's a good idea for me to temper your expectations just a little bit. Now, I love Dusk Divers 1 and 2. I think they're great games, but if you're completely new to this series, you need to understand that they are not big budget AAA games. I will say though, I know that a lot of my subscribers already understand this because, we always talk about niche stuff on this channel, don't we? It's just kind of what we do here. So most of you already know to keep your expectations in check when dealing with relatively unknown titles. However, for anyone that's new here or perhaps hasn't really picked up anything this niche before, just try to think of the game as an average experience before playing it. That way you'll likely be pleasantly surprised when you actually do get around to playing it. If you go into it thinking it's going to be some sort of mega AAA blockbuster, then you're probably going to be disappointed, and we really don't want that. It's just about accepting the game for what it is and for what it does well. On the other hand, if the game was broken garbage and just, awful, I would absolutely tell you that regardless of if I got a review code or not. So I'm not saying we should let everything slide in niche games, but I do think we as players need to be a little bit reasonable. In terms of the game itself, I think it's well worth a play, especially if you've played and enjoyed the original. The story didn't exactly blow me away in the first game or in this one, but it does work and it's absolutely fine. I did like it overall. It's funny because I really do love the characters from both a personality perspective and in terms of their visual design, but the story they appear in is a little less compelling to me. Speaking of the visual design, I played this on a PS5 and I genuinely think it looks great. It's got this super clean and crisp, cel-shaded look to it, and it runs at a near perfect 60 FPS. The whole thing has a very vibrant sense of style to it, from the character status screens to the skills you use in battle. I'd also like to give a nod to the way that the UI has been designed. It would be so easy for them to just create a bog standard and rather dull looking interface or menu screen, but they decided to put in the effort to make everything look slick and coherent, which I do appreciate. The character models are all pretty good in my opinion, and I think they do a good job in conveying each party member's personality. I've always found Yumo to be so endearing. She's just so sweet and dependable, like she'd be anyone's friend. I found the other 3 party members to be decently fleshed out in terms of their motivations and the narrative surrounding them, even more so now because I played the first game as well. I don't think playing the first game is absolutely essential, as this game does contain a story catch-up section. However, if you can and want to pick up the original, I'd still say it's worth it. As far as combat goes, it's definitely seen a good polish since the first outing. As I mentioned earlier, the game is a brawler, so don't expect tight and focused spectacle fighter gameplay. That said, I think it kind of feels like a bit of a hybrid Muso game, just with less enemies on screen, at least to me. You definitely do start to get into a good rhythm during the battles as you start to become more and more aware of what you can actually do. It did honestly feel slightly clunky at the beginning, but very soon you'll start to combo normal attacks into skills and then combo those into wall punishes or finishers. It's definitely something that grows on you over time. Most of the skills are pretty fun to use, and so many of the moves just hit with very satisfying audio-visual feedback. The dodges feel nice and snappy, the lock-on feature works as it should with no issues, and overall, I think the controls work very well indeed. In my opinion, Dusk Diver 2 is a worthwhile experience that will become an incredibly underrated game that I think deserves your time and attention. The first game was, and still is, a little bit rough around the edges, but luckily this sequel is simply a better and more polished version of an already good game. I found it enjoyable to explore the city, it looks quite nice, runs well on the PS5, and most importantly, it's fun to play. The combat this time round feels better to engage with, and the characters have a strong visual presence and are all likeable as far as I'm concerned. Ultimately, if you've played the first one and enjoyed it, I think you absolutely have to buy this one. If not, and you've never even heard of Dusk Diver before, I'd say it's worth looking into. I mean, if you're watching this review and you're looking at this game thinking, nah, that's really not for me, then I'm not sure if actually playing it would change your mind on that. It's a good game, but it's not an amazing, unmissable experience, if you see what I mean. That said, if you like what you're seeing and you want to know if you should pull the trigger, I'd say yeah, I honestly do recommend it. It's a solid game with around 15 to 20 hours of gameplay, and personally, I think it's worth your time. If you enjoy the video, I really hope you'll consider subscribing, and if you like what I do and want to help support the channel, please check out the first link in the video description down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.